So thank you, Bruce and Nikhil, to put this event together and to have associated us. So I will base what my presentation on, in fact, what Kevin just said. Just go a little in details for some of the things, and talk a little more about today what is expected and what you could do. So what I think is very important, as we don't have a lot of time, you may wonder even will you get something done by the end of the day? So what's important for you is to have kind of a process that you will follow. So you have maybe you already have your idea, or you don't, and maybe we will hear some ideas of students after the presentation, so that maybe you can join some teams. So then you will do some brainstorming, and you can write some scenarios about your app uses, and you can also do the personas that we talked about. Maybe you can also decide about what platform you will base your work on. So will you do an app for Android, iOS, Windows Phone, or something else? Because an app on Android is very different from an app on iOS. It's very different from an app on Windows Phone. So the design will be different. So I think you need to choose what platform you want to target. So that's why also it would be great if you could take a little time to read about the design principles for the target platform. And I will give you the links and talk a little about this. Sketch your app. Really do not underestimate the power of pen and pencil and pencil paper. And as Kevin said, you can build a complete prototype with just paper. And some people, they are really using cardboard. They cut their phone. They even make sure that it has the same thickness than a phone, and so on, just to be able to have the experience. So just take some time, and we allocate, I think, 1 hour on that, so that's very important. Wireframing, then you will use a tool to do your design. Also, most of the tools permit you to test your design on a real device. So do also not underestimate the power of testing on a real device. Testing on most of these tools, they use a browser, so it's great, but you will see it's very different from the real experience. A mobile phone, people are using it with one hand, they are moving, they're doing something else at the same time. So you should be testing your apps on in real situations. So you will share your app, you will pitch your app, and you will experience. Hopefully, some of you will be in teams with students from different backgrounds, so that will be a great experience for you. And I think the organizers, the mentors, everybody wants to be amazed by what you can do in a very short time. So pens and pencil sketches. So I try to find 2 examples of sketches, one for iOS and one for Android, because they are 2 different platforms. I'm more of an Android person, so I know really, and I have an iPhone, but I know very little about designing for iPhone really. But as you can see, an iPhone has only one button at the middle here, so there's no back button on the iOS. So you need to think about your experience very differently. As also Kevin was saying, on iOS, the tabs is at the bottom, which is different on Android. In general, the tabs were always at the top. All of this is changing, but there are still you need to read the design principle to know how all of this works. So if we look at that's a sketch for iOS. So for Android. And in Android, yes, you always have the back button here. So the experience will be also very different, and the way you will design it. So that's just one example, but there are tons of them, but I just don't want to go too deeply in that. So readings about the design principle on the different platforms. So I suggest you go to look a little online, depending on what platform you choose to focus on. As you will see, in fact, in this documentation, they talk about they talk about themes, they talk about navigation, like the different navigation. We talk also about the hamburger menu. They talk about the colors that you use in the apps. They talk about the typography, the writing style. So all of this is explained in lots of detail. So if, for example, you want to be a developer or a designer on Android, you really need to read this documentation. And if you want to be on iOS, read this documentation. If you choose another platform, Windows Phone, you need to read really the documentation each time. So some examples. So do you like splash screens on apps? Splash screen, which is a screen that appears at the beginning of the app, like you have the name of the app or a logo or something like this. I think lots of everybody, when you begin programming, you always want to have a splash screen. And in fact, if you read the documentation of iOS, they will tell you they don't like splash screen on iOS. So that's not recommending app. That would be that's the first screen where you have a start and then you go to your calculator. And that's one of the click too much. So what they recommend is go directly to the calculator. Here also another example on the iOS design principles documentation is so you're designing a game and you have a menu. And some people, they really like to use different types of fonts, and they think it looks great like this. No, in fact, it's not recommending. It has to be simple, in fact. So what is recommended is this one. And so you're consistent with one font and so on. I mean, it sounds maybe obvious, but it seems it's not, because we see a lot of things like this. Also, the iOS, here you see the iOS colors. These are the iOS colors. We will see that they are different from, for example, the colors that are on Android. So if you read the Android documentation, also they will tell you how to navigate in the app. So they explain lots of things and so on. In terms of a writing style, they tell you because you once you're going into all your error messages, having alert in your app, so you're thinking about what should I put. What should I write? And here, for example, it's written consult the documentation that came with your phone for further instruction, and they say that's a don't, and the do will be read the instructions that came with your phone, so it's much more direct. And these are the colors and all the variants that are recommended also for designing apps on Android and developing apps on Android. The platform also, they evolve a lot. Kevin was saying, he was looking at iOS 6, iOS 7. I mean, in Android also, every version has different things. Android 5.0 has a very different look from all the other Androids, and they implement what they call material design, which is a guideline for visual, motion, and interaction design across platform and devices. So if you don't know what is material design, in fact, maybe if you install already Android 5.0, and there are not so many people, in fact, who have 5.0, and if you install, for example, an app so even like Inbox, I mean, it's now completely different. So it's not using Gmail, but it's an app for by Google also for your emails. And you see that now, for example, there's this little floating button. It's a plus where you can say, I want to write a new message, so you do plus. And the button is, even if you scroll, the button still stays there, and so on. So there are also lots of things about animation that changes, and if you click on a button, sometimes you see that there's something, if you don't take attention, maybe you don't see it, but otherwise you will see that there's a difference of colors, some gradients and so on. So you will see even in the tools, sometimes they tell you, do you want to use material design, yes or no? Testing on real devices, so even if you're using the tools, we we will test the interactive demo on real phones, and the first thing we may want to do is like use the app in landscape instead of portrait, and we will look at how does it look. So that's the first thing. So when you develop in general, you need really to use your app on different devices. How does it look on a tablet? How does it look on a phone? But then the difficulty is also for Android that there are like, I don't know, more than 20,000 different Android phones in fact available. So the problem will be testing for the right OS, for the right resolution, for the right size, etc. So it's difficult. For iOS it's a little less because there are much less devices. So testing landscape and portrait, testing it in real situations. So once you have your wireframe working, I would say just stand up and use it like while you're walking, while you're doing something else, okay? And as also Kevin was saying, how does it look when you use it only with one your thumb? So if you are developing a real app, you have also to test it in different ways. Like what happens, you're on the subway, your app is doing well, and then there's no internet anymore in the subway. So what happens? Does it crash? That is just a blank screen? What happens? So that's very important for the experience of the user, for example. And also what's the usage of bandwidth of your app? So that's very important. Interruptions, so what happens to your app when you get a phone call and that SMS arrives? Does it have any impact? Testing the navigation, so that's difficult to test also because really you need like lots of feedback, so there are different methodology to do that. How does your app react on low power battery? And how does your app react for outbound situation? For example, like a forgotten password, you know, that's like you don't want to spend like 5 minutes in like if you forgot your password and if you need to set it up again on your mobile phone, that can be really a nightmare that you cannot do on a mobile phone, but you will have to go back to the desktop. So think about all of this. And sometimes in your app you're going to use other apps. So assuming you need a map and you're going to the Google Map application, so what happens? You're out of your app. So what is the experience the user will have? Will he be able to go back to your app? How? And so on. So these are things to think about. So just like a little list. So in terms of tools, we talked about telling you about Proto.io. So that's not the only tool that exists. So there's also another tool, Pop, and I will just show you the video because I think it's quite cool. And Dromo, that was suggested by some students, and Fluid UI. So some of these tools, the learning curve is pretty direct, so it goes fast. Fluid UI, in fact, why it's last, with one of the mentor, Haik, we thought that the learning curve is very quick, but in fact, as you will not be able to insert videos, images and so on, that's why we choose not to put it there. So let me just show you the video of Pop, because Pop means prototyping on paper. So it's an app, and look at what you can do. Okay, do it again. So basically, as you can see, you do your sketching on paper and you take pictures, and in the app you can have the interaction, so it can be really a cool tool to use. So you can decide if Nikhil agrees, you may decide to use this. Otherwise, so let's look a little at Proto.io. How does it look like? So you need to create an account on Proto.io. Okay, and you will be able to use it during 50 days for free. So after that, you will need to pay, however. Okay, and I was playing around a little to see what to do. So just when you create your project, you have the name. You can say what device you use. Use the right device right away, because otherwise everything needs to be resized, and it may you may have some problems. So you can see that, okay, yeah, iPhones, Android phones, tablets, Windows Phone, even like Android Wear and websites even. So you choose what the platform you want. So it's a project, and okay, you can put your icon here. That's cool. So now if we want to edit the project, we can edit the project, or we can like preview the project. So if you want to preview the project, in fact, we get like a URL. You see here we get a URL, so that can be the URL you will share with us. What you can do is also, so as you can see, it's like it just the app will work in the browser. So, and then you have different things you can do. So that's how it works. So other things that you can share, to share the app, you may want to.
Can use a mouse.
Yeah. You can also have a QR code to share the app. So if you want to test it on your phone, because here we are testing it on the desktop or in our browser, don't only rely on that. So just take the picture of your and use the tool to go directly there and test it on your phone. Now, another thing that is really good when you're previewing here, or whether even if you're just using it in the browser, you can change orientation. Okay, and as you can see here, if I change orientation, it looks okay. So here it also looks okay, but all of this, in fact, you will have to do it. The tool does not do it by itself. So it's very good, because it forces you to understand that even if you're going into programming, you will have to have like different screens, the screen in landscape and the screen in portrait. So here, as you can see, I don't have any back buttons and so on here. So I'm just going from one screen to the other that way. So as you can see, each screen is defined 2 times, in the landscape mode and in the portrait mode. So some of you may want to use this type of tool. I think it's really a good tool. If some of you, however, have experience with another tool, you're welcome to use that other tool. If you want to use a scripting language, like just to do the front end of your app, you can do that also. There's no limit at what you can do. The only thing we are looking at is what Nikhil explained at the beginning, the deliverables. So wishing you really good luck for your project, and looking forward to be amazed. Okay, thank you.